Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. But Jim is not here today. We need to throw some prayers up for my man, Jim. He's had not one, but two surgeries in the last week, and he is on the comeback trail. His lovely daughter is by his side in Jacksonville, and he is on the mend, and he'll be back before you know it with great news. But I have an interesting idea today. You know, with all the news that's been happening in WWE land, The Rock is in and Cody is out, or so it seems. I guess we'll find out at the press conference later today. We have been making a lot of comparisons online. When I first saw what was happening on Friday Night SmackDown, I tweeted out a little GIF, I think is the way Cody pronounces it, on Twitter of Hulk Hogan consoling Bret Hart and then sliding in the ring for WrestleMania 9 to take on that big, mean, nasty Yokozuna dude. This feels like WrestleMania 9 to me. And that made me think, you know what? Maybe there are lessons that we can learn from WrestleMania 9. Let's go back and revisit WrestleMania 9 with good old JR. That was his first WWF show, his introduction to Vince McMahon in the world of WWF pay-per-view and WrestleMania. Biggest show of them all. And JR's in a toga. It was actually our very first episode of Grilling JR. And we recorded it, believe it or not, in Las Vegas. We were all there for the Cauliflower Alley convention. And we went to JR's room, or he came to mine, I forget. And we filmed recorded our very first episode of Grilling JR in Las Vegas, talking about the WrestleMania from Las Vegas. And how fitting that today, the WrestleMania press conference, also in Las Vegas. So we're checking a lot of boxes, a lot of coincidences here. So we're going to take a look at WrestleMania 9 today here on Grilling JR. Don't sleep on this episode, but do sleep on 8 Sleep. Today's episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep's pod cover is redefining sleep. It's leveraging data and technology to improve health in a way that no other company is doing. And I have to tell you, this has been an absolute game changer in my life. It is seriously one of my favorite products we've ever come across through our podcast journey together. My wife and I are addicted to this. They have a fantastic app that lets you have all the analytics of exactly what's going on with your sleep. Not only that, but the way it cools your bed down and how quiet it is and how cold it gets. Man, it's the best product of this sort I've ever seen. I absolutely love it. It solved all the tossing and turning. I don't have the breaks in my sleep. I have longer, deeper, more consistent sleep. But now really for the first time, I have the data to support it as well. And that's a big deal, man. It's tracking things like heart rate and breath rate and REM sleep and deep sleep. And it's tracking all the information, and their technology is actually adjusting it. It's unbelievable. I know for sure I'm more productive. I don't feel sluggish in the afternoon. I don't feel like I need to take a power nap in the afternoon to keep going. And sleep science shows us that in order to sleep at our best, our body temperature needs to drop early and in the middle part of sleep and then rise in the morning. That's exactly what 8 Sleep does. I like climbing in a cold bed, and man, it just keeps me in that deep sleep, but then it warms me up to wake me up. Not only that, it'll actually vibrate. You can set an alarm. You can automate all of this through the app. The pod cover has actually improved your sleep by automatically adjusting your bed's temperature based on your individual needs. Your cover can be added to any bed, like a fitted sheet. And it also allows your partner to keep cool or warm on their side of the bed. And that's totally different than what's going on your side of the bed. You could get as low as 55 degrees and she could be up to 110 degrees. It's custom for you. And in addition to keeping you at the perfect temperature all night long, the sleep metrics are unbelievable. Everyone who's used this has reported a quality improvement on their sleep by 32% just a month after the pod. I would argue that mine's even better. Hey, let's just brass tacks it. Let me give you a little pro tip. You want a great day tomorrow? Have a great night of sleep tonight. It really is that simple. There's no better way to improve your daily life than to improve your nightly sleep. And the easiest way to do that is 8 Sleep's pod cover. Start this new year right and invest in the rest that you deserve with the 8 Sleep pod. Go right now to 8sleep.com/JR. You'll get $200 off plus free shipping on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. That's EIGHT sleep.com/JR. You'll get $200 off plus free shipping on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. And without further ado, let's revisit WrestleMania 9 from Las Vegas, recorded in Las Vegas on the same day as the WrestleMania press conference in Las Vegas. But they did a little switcheroo back then, and maybe they're doing one now. Let's see what JR had to say about WrestleMania 31 years ago. WrestleMania 9 on deck. Jim Ross's debut right here on Grilling JR. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, the one and only good old JR, Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Conrad. Better probably I deserve to be. We're living in interesting times, as everybody knows. I'm not going to go into a long diatribe about the virus, but it's affecting everybody's life, no matter where you live, no matter where you're listening to. There is some effect on your life right now as we speak regarding this damn virus. So,
well, Jim, I got to tell you, we got to give you guys a lot of props. It feels like everything has been canceled, and yet the wrestling companies find a way to keep cranking out content. WWE had to experiment a little bit with the empty arena SmackDowns and empty arena Raws. And then we got to see our first empty arena Dynamite, and man, it was just high marks all across the board. The most well-received empty arena thing since probably, Lawler Funk, huh?
Yeah, that was classic. It was great. I'm sure a lot of folks are catching up with the empty arena match with Lawler and Funk on YouTube and things of that nature. This thing's affecting all of us, and it's affecting travel and the whole 9 yards. I'm planning on going back out next week, or put that better said. I'm planning on flying every week that we're working.
Yeah,
we just don't know how long the damn flights are going to continue to go.
Yeah, it's a weird time, man. There's so many uncertainties in our life right now. One thing we can always count on, though, Jim and I are going to work hard to entertain you. He is broadcasting from the comfort of his home, and I'm doing the same. So we're both sort of self-quarantined, and I know that you guys are taking similar steps. I read in the Observer that last week's Dynamite, it was a deal where the crew had to leave before the roster could show up, and then everyone was separated, and great attention to detail to make sure that, we're going to great lengths to try to entertain everybody, but keep everybody safe. But thankfully, our product here, the podcast, man, you can enjoy this all by yourself.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue to put out new shows every week. If Conrad wanted me to, and he wanted to do 2 shows a week during this ordeal or additional material, I'm all in, no pun intended. But we're going to continue to do what we do because we all need a diversion. And hopefully these few minutes that you spend with us will provide you that diversion. I got a lot on my mind this week, Conrad. This week, this past, the 22nd of March was when Jan died. And I think her accident was on the 20th. So all this whole week and these few days, there's always something that pops up. Somebody remembers, I get a tweet or a Facebook thing or what have you, Twitter. Twitter's always big for that stuff. It's amazing how fans have this great memory and recall. But nonetheless, I lost my angel 3 years ago this week. It's not much easier, but it is what it is. And we have to continue to live and enjoy things and be respectful of what we got. And I certainly am blessed with 25 years of that woman. So it's all good. Life is good. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed. And this show we're talking about today was probably one of the biggest blessings I ever had professionally.
Absolutely.
Because it kind of launched everything.
We're going to talk about WrestleMania 9 today, but before we get going, we should mention, if you're a big fan of Mr. Ross and obviously want to hear more about his story, just like I am, I can't recommend his new book enough. It's something you can do right now while you're self-quarantining a little bit too. It's jrsbbq.com is where you can pick up an autograph version. You're also going to get a commemorative bookmark as a little keepsake, and he'll personalize it for you. And that includes free shipping to the lower 48 for just $40. But by now it's going to be just about everywhere. I guess you should know that on the 30th. Now, most businesses are probably closed, but from what I understand, Amazon is still delivering. So Amazon can help you get this. And, I understand that there's still going to be delivery methods even in these unique times. So, you can certainly try that, but you can also go to jrsbbq.com and just get it customized. Why not?
Yeah, we're going to ship. If your order comes in, for example, today, it will go out tomorrow. So we're going to ship our books. We're working on an opportunity. It won't be $40, but it's not going to be a highway robbery either because of the damn cost of the shipping. We're also working on a shipping package, a book package for the UK and for Canada that should be public anytime. But the lower 48, as Conrad said, free. That's a hell of a good deal. We're going to ship them out from here in Norman. So I appreciate your support on that. It's probably the most memorable piece of work that I've ever been involved in creating because of the nature of the story and how it affected my life. It affected my friend's life, my family, because Jan was such a big part of what we did. And you realize how important she was in the talent relations department, because most of these guys that I've managed had a family, and they had wives more often than not, and for the men, obviously. But she was just great with talking to them and making them comfortable, making them feel that they're important too. Because these wrestling relationships, one reason these damn wrestling relationships don't work is because the star of the family has such a unsurpassed ego that they could be he or she have to be the center of everything. And so sometimes then the significant other gets kind of left out. And so she was very good about picking up the slack there and remembering birthdays and anniversaries and things like that. So I think for wrestling fans that like history, like reality, and look, it's not a hatchet job of JR killing Vince. There's stories in there that'll make you cringe, but they're truth. And it made me stronger. And look where I am today. I'm in AEW, loving life. I'm working with Conrad Thompson, loving life. So what the hell do I have to be complaining about? I'm very lucky, very blessed. And again, I think you'll really love the book.
It's the best wrestling book I've ever read. I've heard a lot of people say that the best book was Mick Foley's first one or Bret Hart's book. But I'm going to tell you, this is in everybody's top 3. You got to see it. You got to read it. You got to check it out. I couldn't put it down. Can't recommend it enough. jrsbbq.com. Get it personalized. It is a great book. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, I think even a casual wrestling fan or even your wife may enjoy it because there's a real human aspect to it. So can't recommend it enough. Go out of your way to get it. But without further ado, we're here today to talk about one of the most important days of Jim's career. It's WrestleMania 9. When you and I first started doing this show, our first episode was about leaving WCW. And this is really where it all gets kicked off for you. I know you had done some behind the scenes stuff and some promotional stuff and some radio stuff, but this is your first WWF broadcast, is it not?
Yeah. First public broadcast. The irony of that is, before Bobby Heenan and I flew from Stanford, LaGuardia, more specifically, back out to Vegas, we did voiceovers for the shows that would air after WrestleMania. So you may wonder, well, how did you do that? Well, through the magic of fiction, storytelling. So Heenan and I worked together before leaving, because it was the regular voiceover week, to do 3 challenge shows. So Heenan and I did 3 wrestling challenge shows based on what we thought was going to happen, or told was going to happen in Las Vegas at WrestleMania 9. So we actually did some work before we left, but live, for all that really counts, WrestleMania 9 was the launch of everything that I did in those 26 years with Vince.
Let's dig into it, man. It's a weird time in wrestling too, because there's so much upheaval in WCW. I guess we should remind everybody, this went down on April 4th, 1993, Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It's a first that there's going to be a show like this outdoors for WrestleMania. And it's also your first show in the WWF. Let's sort of reset the stage of how you got here. There was a major bloodletting, is the way it was described in the Observer, on February 2nd. It is a significant change in the hierarchy of WCW that resulted in a loss of power of Bill Watts. And for better or worse, you got some shrapnel on you, and you saw your duties change in a way where you weren't exactly tickled with this move. Was that fair to say?
No, I wasn't, because the WCW and the brain surgeons of Bill Shaw and Bob Dew, they had no respect for wrestling, in my opinion. And they, as much as said that, they paid no attention to it. They didn't try to learn more about the business and gain product knowledge whatsoever. So it was not they violated their own contract. TVS wrote a contract for me, a 3-year contract, good money, and they outlined my job description. I didn't ask for that. They wanted that, so I agreed to it. My manager and I agreed to that. So they violated meaning WCW, violated their own agreement by reassigning me to be a syndicated TV salesman. And I was so naive and trying to be a team player that I went along with it for about a week. It was horrible. I felt like I'd been neutered. My balls are cut off and hung on the antenna of the car. It was horrible. So it was not good. It was a bad way to leave in that respect. But in hindsight, after all the heartbreak and the emotional bullshit and getting that shrapnel from the cowboy, which is just a convenient way for a lot of guys to avoid confrontation or discussion or communication. Well, Bill, you got too much heat from Bill, so we got to change this thing. So it never came to me like, well, you did this, you did that. It was always about Cowboy. So Cowboy was the villain. Cowboy was the heel. I was, the Man Friday here, and boom, the shit spread everywhere. And when shit starts slinging, you're bound to get a little on you.
We should mention, you wrote in your book, when he was gone, I was ostracized. And you go into specifics when you say that Bill Shaw brought you into the office and said that, quote, "Here's your options from here on out. You can take 6 weeks off to let things cool down." And you interrupted him. "I don't want to." And he would continue, "Just hear me out. We'll continue to pay you, and you come back when the bad taste is gone out of this place." But I didn't want to go anywhere. I knew what it would look like if I followed Watts out the door, even short term. So I asked, "What's my other option?" And he said, "Well, you accept a reassignment. You keep your official title as vice president of broadcasting, and you interrupt, but," and he continues, "but you'll be working in syndication sales, traveling nationwide to market WCW to various local TV affiliates across the country. You'll also be working behind the scenes with the announcers on the Sunday WCW show." And he pushed, "If you take the 6 weeks, I might be able to get you back on the air when you get back." And you wrote in your book, Shaw knew that was the position I wanted to keep the most. And you asked, "How are you going to get me back on the air when Bischoff specifically said he doesn't want me calling the shows?" And Shaw replies, "You don't have to worry about Bischoff. He works for me." Now, of course, we know how that's going to wind up. You ultimately decide this isn't for you. You resign on February 25th, 1993. Did you ever have a conversation with Bischoff about why he didn't want you on the call?
I don't remember that we did, quite honestly. And look, it was so simple. It wasn't a mystery. I didn't need to have confirmation from Eric as to why he didn't want me there. I cast a long shadow there. I was a very important part, at least in my mind, of the administration of WCW since the day it was formed. So he didn't need me there. And if I were in his position, I probably would have done the same thing. You need to clean house. You need to get all the old baggage away, whether that baggage is good, still got use or not. I felt like I still had plenty of use. I think subsequently in the 26 years that followed that in WWE, I proved that on more than one occasion. And it also showed early on that even though Eric got the job, and he did a hell of a job for a good while, no doubt, and I know that he's a part of your podcast family. Every Monday he comes on with a new show, which I try to listen to. I enjoy. There was nothing to talk about. What are we going to talk about? He's going to tell me why he needs to have nobody, quote unquote, looking over his shoulder. He's going to tell me why that JR's people are not going to have JR to talk to or to commiserate with. I knew the reason. I got it. And quite frankly, I'm glad that we didn't have any talks, because if he had tried to talk me out of what his decision was, which was not going to happen, then I might not have gone to WWE. And if I had not gone to WWE in 1993, then a lot of great things in my life would not have occurred.
Yeah, listen, it worked out, for the best, to be sure. Did you know, as soon as, you're having this meeting with him and you feel like, hey, I'm on my way out. Did you know right then, hey, I think I can get a job with the WWF? Or is it more of no matter what, I know I don't want to be here?
Well, good question. I wasn't 100% sure that I could get a job in WWE or WWF until I went to Augusta and was a guest there and basically stood out behind the building in the loading dock area with Vince McMahon for 3 hours talking about me coming to work there, not pitching it over and over, but he had ideas for me. He wanted to pick my brain. We talked about buying libraries. We talked about buying all these old wrestling territory libraries, TV libraries. That was an idea that he and I shared, and both were very motivated with, and hence the WWE has a network now, largely in the beginning made up of this product that we're talking about. We talked about doing a radio WWF show, which have been a forerunner to podcasting. We believe that audio was an important element in our future. So we talked about a lot of things. Never talked about what's my assignment going to be, who's my partner going to be, what show am I going to be on, what about me, am I going to get a goddamn push, Vince? Come on, tell me. You can tell me right here. A push is what I'm needing. No, I need a job. And let's get over the bullshit. So I was hoping I'd get a job there, but I did know, Conrad, based on your question, I didn't want to hang around with there are a lot of guys in WCW I really like. Keith Mitchell, who's our head of AEW production now, but the guys I liked, I would love being around. Tony Schiavone, who's now with us in AEW as well, as everybody knows. But I didn't need to be around Bill Shaw. He was already plotting against Bischoff. Well, I'll take care of that. He works for me. Okay, big shot. Bill Shaw is like Andy Griffith on crack. Imagine Andy Griffith as a heel. That's Bill Shaw. And Bob Dew was more concerned about happy hour, golf, and the ladies. Simple deal. And they didn't get any work out of Dew. He ran the Omni for a while. Hell, that's an idiot job. Anybody could do that. So I needed to get out of Atlanta at that point. So that's it. So I knew I had a gig. I knew I wanted a gig in WWE. But look, I was ready to do something else. I was ready to get out of wrestling. I was ready to try another challenge. But certainly, I was hoping that McMahon would hire me, and he did.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, the whole jump. So we'll keep it moving here, but we should mention that your meeting with Vince takes place on March 9th, 1993. Fast forward, and all of a sudden, your big radio show on WSB, which is a major station in Atlanta, and this is back when radio was a really big deal, and this has a huge signal, and it's also in Turner's backyard. Well, your radio show essentially becomes an infomercial for WrestleMania. Man, I bet Vince McMahon was loving every bit of this, was he not? Oh
yeah, he loved it. He loved it because it was bold, and we were getting a lot of attention. Getting a lot of, if it had been today's marketplace, Conrad, with today's social media set up as it is, that would have been a huge story. It was a huge story anyway, but it would have been even more amplified if it was in today's marketplace. But yeah, I used the radio show I sold that radio show myself. I sold the ads. My friend Bob Hughes at Georgia Power was a big sponsor, among others. And so I had, that was my show. And I was getting paid directly the income from those ads. That's how you made the money, the ads. Just like, largely like what we do now. So it was in 37 states. And when Vince had the opportunity to do a 37-state infomercial to sell WrestleMania 9 on pay-per-view, the first ever outdoor WrestleMania, he jumped at it. And I don't blame him. It was a great marketing opportunity to a target audience.
Let's talk about some of the news and notes heading into this show, because we've covered a lot of your jump in our first episode. Go back and find it in the archives. I think it's called JR Heads North. Let's talk about February 18th, 1993. Kerry Von Erich passes away. He's a former NWA champion. In fact, at the time he passed, he was the second youngest man to win the world title at 24 years old. Luthez won it when he was 21. He's also a former Intercontinental Champion in the WWF. But a lot of folks thought, man, this was going to be one of the next big, great stars in our business. Ric Flair has often said that nobody got a reaction like they did in Texas. It was just their town, and it was the entire state, and they were rock stars as big as he'd ever seen. And obviously Kerry had one of the most phenomenal physiques in the history of wrestling. Did you ever meet Kerry? What were your thoughts about on his career? And was it a major shock when he passed away?
No, it wasn't a major shock when he passed away because of his lifestyle. You know, you can't hide the fact that the guy had drug and alcohol issues. And I'm talking about just steroids or muscle enhancement. Kerry was a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he had great DNA, great genetics, and he did have as much natural charisma as anybody I've ever seen. But you know, you knew from the day one that when you first met him, I don't think I've met Kerry. I don't know how long I knew Kerry before I met him when he wasn't high. And that's just a fact. Sad. It might just been on some weed, maybe smoking some pot. I don't know. But I know he liked pills at some points in time. It just was that damn demon that he couldn't get rid of, couldn't shake. But as far as you drew a picture of a wrestler before his accident, before he got his foot amputated, or whatever the hell happened there, then, you know, he's a guy. 6'2", 245, agile, athletic, ruggedly, uniquely handsome. He had unique looks. He was a little Schwarzenegger-ish in that regard. But he was special. There's no doubt about it. He was special. But he prized, apparently, he prized being high over being great. And that has been a problem with wrestlers. It happened a lot throughout the 80s. Guys would rather spend their big money they're making. It's never going to end. And they'd rather spend it on material things and getting high than being great and living a good life.
Well, he left us way too early. February 18th, 1993. His funeral was held on February 22nd. Andre the Giant's funeral was held just 2 days later on February 24th. On March 10th, Dino Bravo would be murdered in his home. He shot 7 times in the head and 10 times in the torso. Man, there is too much death in this very short stretch here, is there not?
Oh God, yeah. It's just, it was out of control. Lack of management and, control, rules, structure, communication. It's a wonder that the wrestling business survived a lot of that stuff, but it goes to show where we are now. When people say, what's going to happen to your business, JR? Well, it's going to slow down. It's going to be adjusted, but it's not going to go away. The pro wrestling business is not going to die because of this virus or any other scandal or any other issue, any other calamity. It's like a goddamn roach. You can't kill them all, and the wrestling business is not going to die. So we just got to adjust with the times. But we're lucky that in that 80s, the decadent 80s. There was just not enough drugs. There was just not enough money. There was not enough Rolexes. There was not enough boob jobs. There was not enough of everything. Everything was excessive. And so I even though we lost a lot of real good men and some women, we're probably lucky, Conrad, in wrestling as fans like you and I are, that we didn't lose more because this shit was flowing, man. It was flowing.
It's time for the ultimate face-off. The Beard Bowl is here. And as the two best teams square off to see who the champion of facial fuzz is, our friends at Manscaped are prepping everything you need for game day. Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the MVP of facial grooming, offering precision trimming, water-resistant technology, and enough styling options to outplay any opponent. And guess what? You can join the winning team along with the 10 million men who already trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use the code Jim Ross for 20% off and free shipping. Craft your winning look with Manscaped. I don't know about you, but this weekend I got the Chiefs. It feels like the fix is in. Not really. But it does feel like this could be the ending of a movie. And if you need those movie star looks, man, don't let your beard get benched. It deserves the spotlight on the biggest stage. The Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the ultimate franchise player. to take your grooming game to the end zone. This package has made it easier than ever to craft your signature look with ease. You got the Beard Hedger cordless trimmer. It packs one guard with 20 different lengths. That's right, no more messy drawers full of guards. But wait, there's more. The Beard Hedger is also water resistant as well. You can run it under the sink and shave in the shower for easy cleanups. It's time to move the sticks from your old beard razor. Look and feel ready for the big game every day with Manscaped's beard formulations. They've got the beard balm, the beard oil, plus the shampoo and conditioner. And as a bonus, they've even thrown in a beard accessory pack, like a beard brush, a beard comb, and beard scissors, all for the finishing touches for every modern bearded gentleman. And the playoff beard has never looked better. Trust Manscaped to get the job done. Get yourself 20% off and free shipping with our code JimRoss at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com with our code JimRoss. Gear up for the real halftime show where your beard takes center stage. It's pretty remarkable, what all's going on in this era with regard to, sort of the dark side of the business, and dark side of the ring on Vice is actually happening now. Earlier this week, we saw the 2-hour debut of the Chris Benoit tragedy and that story. I've had an opportunity to screen that one before it came out. I've also seen the New Jack one and the Brawl for All one. Really outstanding work again from the guys at Vice. Go out of your way to find it. It's called Dark Side of the Ring. The debut episode was 2 nights ago on the 24th. And just find Vice in your local cable provider. And I think they're even posting some little teaser clips on YouTube. But the one I'm most fascinated to see, and there's a lot of good stuff that's being covered. Not good stuff, you know what I mean? Interesting topics. But the Dino Bravo murder is something that I don't think has been discussed nearly enough. And I know that you were somewhat involved in Dark Side of the Ring season 2. What can you tell us about Dino Bravo and what went down there?
It was very simple. He tried to make money in a shortcut way, illegally, selling cigarettes illegally on the black market there in Montreal. He cut in on somebody's business, somebody meaning an organized crime person, and he went too deep into their territory. And as a result, I'm sure he was warned. I'm sure his wrestling ego and I'm fucking Dino Bravo. You can't tell me what to do in Montreal. This is my town, which resulted in him becoming a target and shot many times in the head. Hey, you can bet this. If you watch, like me, I've been binge watching Law and Order SVU. So I've become this expert now in criminology, Conrad. If you need to know anything, I'm your guy. I'm your guy. But he just got in business with the wrong folks, and they killed his ass. And they want to make sure everybody knew he was really going to be dead. There was no doubt in anybody's mind. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
And he was butchered with bullets. And so, and here's the irony of that. I don't know what happened to the cigarette business in Montreal, the illegal cigarette business, but it seemed like it kind of got brushed under the rug. Nobody said nothing about it. Nobody did anything about it. His death was a big story, but bottom line, he tried to make money illegally. He got in the wrong lane. He didn't stay in your lane, bro. He didn't stay in his lane, and he got his ass assassinated. Simple as that. I'm overstating the simplicity of it. It wasn't simple when a man gets butchered, but he got butchered, assassinated, without a shadow of a doubt. We're killing this guy, and this is going to be a message to anybody else that has the idea that wants to cut in on our business. The mafia deal, mafia thing.
Find out more on Vice, Dark Side of the Ring, coming your way. Check your local listings, but I've got it on DirecTV, and hopefully you do too. Let's talk about some lawsuits for the WWF. Dave Meltzer would report that McMahon was suing Nails. According to the complaint filed in the Brown County Circuit Court of Wisconsin, McMahon claimed that Nails perpetrated a violent attack and assault upon him with great force and violence. As a consequence of the attack, the suit claimed that McMahon suffered pain and bodily injury, as well as embarrassment and humiliation. McMahon also claimed the defendant filed a false police report claiming he had been sexually assaulted, and the police report compounded the anguish and humiliation because the police report was published in various media outlets. Before we move on to the other lawsuits, this whole Nails situation has been one that's been whispered about for years and years. I know you weren't there when it happened, but what did you hear about this story?
Well, Nails is a little different cat, kind of unstable from what I remember. And he wasn't getting his break. He wasn't getting his push. There it is, that push word again. And he felt like that Vince was personally subduing his growth. Let me to ask you how smart that really is to think about. Why would you have someone on your payroll and you're paying them and you're traveling them? You're putting them on television if you want their character to die. That's like when WWE was going to do the last few things with Matt Hardy. Well, everybody said, well, they're burying Matt Hardy. That was their intent, was to bury Matt Hardy.
Right.
But from their own mismanagement and lack of attention to detail and lack of common sense, they got Matt Hardy over more on his way out than they did while he was there. He was doing promos. He was in hot angles. He's with Randy Orton, blah, blah, blah. So you're not burying him. You're getting him over, dumbass. And so now Matt Hardy's in AEW, which is going to be great for us, I think. But I don't know, Connie. I think that Nails just had this vision of him being this major star and being the top heel in the company. And when that didn't come his way, he felt like he had been personally assaulted or attacked. And then he, being a very competitive and combative individual, maybe not as stable as some people would like for him to be. I didn't know the guy that well.
Right.
Like you said, I wasn't there, but I know that the altercation he had with Vince, and then of course he's going to come up with an excuse that McMahon put a hit on him or something. Well, that's stupid. That's just ridiculous. It's just another deal where an issue between two people, Vince and the WWE and Nails. There was the communication broke down. They stopped talking. They started, ranting. It was just bullshit, is the way I remember it. But talents have a funny way of not wanting to accept responsibility for their own success or failure.
Let's talk about the next lawsuit. This one's from the Ultimate Warrior. He's going to file a $5.8 million lawsuit against Titan Sports, Vince and Linda. The 19-page lawsuit was filed 2 weeks ago in the Eastern District of New York. Talk to me a little bit about, what you heard coming into the company about dealing with the Ultimate Warrior. I think back in the day, you dealt with him when he was first breaking in the business, but now he's gone on to be a big star and apparently has developed a bit of a reputation along the way.
Yeah, apparently a bit of a reputation. I think it was a giant pain in the ass from day one. And again, well, JR speaking bad of the dead. Oh, okay. Look, I'm speaking, Conrad asked me a question. We're talking about a journey here, and the Warrior plays a part in that journey to some degree. He had a massive ego, knowing that he was not highly skilled, knowing that his number one selling point was his physique and his charisma that largely was created through music and lights and pyro and things of that nature. He wasn't a good person in my view. That's my opinion. I thought that he used extremely coarse and abusive language in front of women of all ages. I thought that was ridiculous. I've seen it in my own eyes. I'm not bullshitting or telling somebody's story that, I heard. This is not rumor and innuendo. This ain't Bruce. I'm telling you what I saw. And I didn't think the guy was a good person. So, but he always seemed to be at the center of controversy, which is not always good. And he was always centered to be seemingly looking for that easy payday. And so I didn't have a lot of respect for the Ultimate Warrior, to be honest with you. I'm sad that he passed. I'm glad that he got his moment in the sun before he died. I really am, for his fans' sake and his family. I'm sad that he left two beautiful daughters and a very lovely wife upon his death. But we have to be honest. People may say the same shit about me and you, Conrad, and we're gone. He wasn't a good guy. And so I didn't have anytime there was a lawsuit with him involved, I always was cheering for the other guys, because I just thought he was looking for a payday, and simple as that, and had little to no respect for our business. And I ain't got a lot of time for guys like that.
Let's talk about the last lawsuit in WWE land. Vince and Titan Sports are suing the New York Post and Phil Mushnik. For as long as I can remember, Phil Mushnik was a thorn in Vince McMahon's side. What do you remember about this sort of weird relationship?
It was strange, wasn't it? Mushnik had this hard on, figuratively, I'm assuming, for events and wrestling in general. He was a very, very anti-pro wrestling fan. And I think part of it stems from the fact that my belief now is that as a young guy, Mushnik was probably a significant wrestling fan. But the product changed so much from the days of Bruno and Backlund and the typical and the predictable WWE presentation. Using the babyface as your champion. You build everything around your babyface champion. You have a heel factory. The heels present challenges, put the babyface in jeopardy. All of a sudden, the babyface then eventually prevails at the end of the day. And oops, here comes another challenger, all for that coveted championship. So they did things differently in those days. And I think Mushnik may liked it. I really believe that. But then when he saw the other things that were going on, the Attitude Era, the different characterizations, the personalities, he turned rogue in that regard. And he was a columnist for the Post, very well read, very popular, and popular in the sense that he was a heel to a lot of people, but he played it up. And then he knew that wrestling fans were all a little bit crazy about protecting our business and supporting it because we always feel like they're the skinniest kid at fat camp when we're a wrestling fan. So all of a sudden, he's got a whole audience that's breathing down his neck, and he loved it. So he fed his own ego and his own persona, but that was all that was. It was just Vince didn't like the guy. Nobody liked him. He was trying to hatchet our business. And I think I remember one time he was on a radio show, Mike and the Mad Dog on WFAN, where my friend Steve Summers says, "Me here, you there," overnights. I used to listen to him a lot. They got McMahon and Mushnik on the radio together, and that was one of the most. If people can find that someplace, if it's been archived somewhere, it's worth the listen. Because I don't know who got hijacked. I think Vince wasn't sure that Mushnik was going to be on, or vice versa. Mike and the Mad Dog were good shit disturbers. They were getting high ratings right then. Mike Francesa isn't on the air anymore, at least in the WFAN, and of course Chris Russo's a big star. Where my buddies saw it busted open on Sirius XM. So that was where that was. It got to be personal. And I think when you heard Mushnik, if you can find the audio, Conrad, his voice is trembling like a child. He was so intimidated. So he seemed to be scared to death to actually be on the phone line with McMahon. It was really entertaining audio, no doubt.
Let's talk about another side of Vince. On March 15th, Vince was going to be honored by the Michael Landon Foundation for his philanthropic contributions to charity. And at the same time, the U.S. Justice Department is continuing their investigation. This is a weird time for Vince McMahon, is it not? I mean, on the one hand, you're vilified in the New York Post. On the other hand, you're being sued by a wrestler, or you're having charges brought up by a wrestler saying he sexually assaulted you. And oh yeah, the U.S. Justice Department is out to get you. It's a weird time that all of these bad things are happening. And now we're going to have a celebration in your honor for all the good you've done for charity.
Yeah. Weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. Well, Vince, to be honest with you, sometimes I think he did not use as clear judgment as he could have in those that were surrounding him and advising him. Even he could, I had no issues telling Vince McMahon no. Maybe that's why we ended as we did. But I always felt like it was my obligation to be honest, and I also believe that I had a good aptitude for the business. In other words, I didn't need Vince McMahon to teach me how to do everything in the wrestling business. Did he teach me a lot? Hell yeah, without a doubt. But I didn't come empty-handed. I didn't come without a background. I didn't come without an education or experiences. And so I think that Vince sometimes was hanging around the wrong people. They made bad decisions. He became defiant. He became combative, and he felt like he was the king of the world. He's like on the Titanic, on the king of the world. And he found out that he was not the king of the world, and people were very willing to take shots at him because he had not been really sweet to a lot of people on his way up.
Let's talk about some news and notes behind the scenes. Meltzer would write, add Owen Hart and Ted DiBiase to the injured list. DiBiase suffered a herniated disc and missed all the shows this past weekend. Well, I haven't heard this from anyone who knows. The injury is serious enough that he'll probably be kept out until Mania because he has to work that match. Hart blew out his knee on March 8th in a TV match against Bam Bam Bigelow. Don't know the severity, but he was in great pain after the match backstage and was put into a knee brace. DiBiase is in a primetime spot on this WrestleMania 9 show. It's the return of Hulk Hogan, and it's a tag match, Money Inc. versus Hogan and Beefcake. And they just set up a big angle where they attacked Beefcake and crushed his face and the reconstructed face after the parasailing accident, et cetera, et cetera. Do you remember hearing coming into this show that there may be some question as to whether or not DiBiase could go?
Yeah, there was questions about Teddy going, but knowing Teddy, he knew how to work around his injury, and he did, because he's probably one of the most skilled performers on the entire card. There was always things going on concerning the Hogan presentation. There was always this talk and this secret, and then nobody knows this, and hey, this. It was almost comical, because everybody felt like they're more important if their shit is off the radar.
Right.
And they're only dealing with Vince, where they're more important. And there was a lot of guys that really needed to be more important in those days. And that was the one guy that our company at that time, Vince was the guy on everything. Now we understand he still is, but they have different people doing different things there. And we did going forward not too long after that, including myself. So, we knew Teddy was probably going to work, but the Hogan thing, there was always, was it really a jet skiing accident? Was it something? Everything took a life of its own. And then, of course, Hogan coming back kind of abruptly, and that changed the booking entirely at WrestleMania 9 with Hogan's appearance on the card and how they handled it. Was like an old Mid-South or an old Houston wrestling finish where you lose the title and you win it back and blah, blah, blah. So, but Hogan was the straw that stirred the drink at WrestleMania 9, no doubt about it. Everything was changed to make him happy and to facilitate that title change.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. Meltzer would report several new faces expected in at or after WrestleMania. Luna Vachon will start, most likely as a valet for Shawn Michaels to feud with Sherry. Luna shaved her head and is now being given a new set of extensions for her role as a Bizarro type. Brian Clark, who works for SMW as Night Stalker, was the most impressive of the tryouts in the eyes of those who make the decision and was offered a spot, although he'll be filling out his SMW commitments until that time.
That's Smoky Mountain Wrestling, by the way.
That's right. And we know that Brian Clark is going to go on to be Adam Bomb eventually. And we also get the news that Kip Sopp and his partner Mike, who had been working as the Lone Riders for Eddie Mansfield, are going to start after Mania doing a cowboy tag team gimmick, who we know are going to become Bart and Billy Gunn, the Smoking Guns.
I love this, Conrad. As the Long Riders, the Smoking Guns were called Kip Winchester and Bret Colt.
Yeah.
If that's not an expose about how stupid we fucking are in the wrestling business, Kip Winchester. And I'm Bret Colt, and we are the Long Riders. Bullshit. God, that's old.
Meltzer would later report that Mike Shaw and the Harris twins are also going to be offered a contract. Of course, Mike Shaw is going to come in to be Bastion Booger. The Harris twins were the Blue Brothers. I got to tell you, Jim, this is a weird time in the WWF. Lots of moving and shaking, lots of coming and going. But at this point, we should mention you're not running talent relations. You're simply on-air talent. Is that correct? That's
right. That's all. And that was it. Yeah. Mike Shaw. I had a vision for Mike Shaw in WCW that got hijacked because, I think I made a good call to bring him in. Stu Hart liked the guy. I always believed in what Stu told me. Stu gave him a great recommendation because Mike was a big star there in Calgary as Mock and Sing. I didn't want to get too far away from Mock and Sing. I want a basic, brutal ass heel. And for us in WCW. And all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, it became a quasi-comedic figure called Norman the Lunatic. So now we're making fun of the mentally ill. He hears these voices and has all these headaches. Very, very politically incorrect. And then we took him away from what he did best. And so, in other words, that'd be like signing a guy who said, well, we got this guy at free agency in the NFL. It's all going on now. Big deal. And he's got great hands. He caught 80 passes last year. We're going to bring him in and make him a guard. What? What are you doing? He had 80 catches. He's got good hands. He's a receiver. Mike Shaw is a heel. He's a good heel. He's a believable heel. He can feed a comeback. So, but instead we make him a lunatic and a half-assed comedic figure that never got over, bless his heart.
Let's talk about the March to WrestleMania that took place on March 28th. It's 7 days before WrestleMania. It's actually taped on March 7th in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It does a 3.3 rating. Yokozuna beats Randy Savage with a belly-to-belly suplex. Mr. Perfect beats Skinner with the Perfect Plex. Kamala beats Kim Chi with a splash. Money Inc. beats Jerry Sabin and Reno Riggins. Tatanka beats George South. The Bushwhackers and Tiger Jackson beat the Beverly Brothers and Little Louie. And the Undertaker beats Bam Bam Bigelow by countout. We haven't really talked about this before, but the March to WrestleMania being just a special TV event that stands alone on its own. It's not Raw. It's not another syndicated show. It's a standalone just to build the hype and anticipation of WrestleMania. Were you around for this one? I mean, obviously this is something that you wouldn't have been a part of the company for when the actual matches were taped, but the actual video presentation, or do you have your fingerprints on that at all?
No, none at all. I didn't go. I wasn't there. I watched it, obviously for my own entertainment and education.
Sure.
But I wasn't there. So it was pretty basic. It's like a Monday Night Raw enhanced. So basically, but it was that's all.
Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about WrestleMania 9. I guess we should start with the funny thing that you sort of teased last week. When did you find out you were going to have to wear a toga in your WWF debut?
When I got to Vegas, everybody was going to be in costume, and it was just taken for granted that we were all going to be wearing something. And anybody that was on camera, cameramen, whatever, Monsoon Gorilla only did introduce me because he was going to do the play-by-play of the show until he came down ill, and I got the spot. Monsoon was in costume for his one shot, Heenan, Savage, all of us, they're on camera, Howard Finkel. So Finkus Maximus or whatever the hell they called him. Good stuff. But yeah, when I got there, didn't care a bit, didn't bother me. Vince even told me, he said, I want you to wear a toga and we're going to all be in costume. And I want you to wear a toga. If you have a problem wearing the toga, then don't worry about it. I'll get somebody else to do the show. Seriously. And here I am, 19 years in the business, not no overnight sensation, coming out of a very dysfunctional family split in Atlanta and WCW, needing to be accepted again, needing to prove that I could still do my job, and that those decision makers in Atlanta who thought that I could not do my job any longer were wrong. We all knew they were wrong, and I proved that they were wrong for many years to come. Luckily enough. So I didn't care, man. I'm this is a long way from making, $125 a week driving Leroy McGurk around, my blind owner in his Cadillac. So I ain't going to bitch about nothing. Let's just go to work.
Let's mention the toga, because it does feel like, for better or worse, a lot of folks over the years have said, oh, the WWF, or in New York, it's corny and they do cartoon presentations and it's for children and blah, blah, blah. Talk to me a little bit about how any of that maybe crossed your mind, when guys in the quote unquote real wrestling business would sort of thumb their nose at WWE stuff, and then fast forward and your first shot here, you're in a toga.
Well, I didn't care because they were at the VFW hall or the bingo hall or some other hall. I was at WrestleMania, Conrad. I was in the first ever outdoor WrestleMania, and it wasn't at the Motel 6 outside of Vegas. It was at Caesar's Palace. I had the best gig for my role in lot in life professionally that I could ever have, doing play-by-play at WrestleMania. My first assignment was not going to start even though technically it was challenge, nobody had seen it. So my first foray on WWE television, WWF television, was at WrestleMania. I had it made, man. I didn't care what anybody else thought. We worry about that too much. And it's not, man. I'm not going to worry about things I can't affect, because somebody's always going to bitch about your success. Or, oh, look at that. JR got this gig. Look at him. They made a fool out of him. He was a straight announcer. Now look at this. I was that way for like 3 hours. Come on. 3 hours. But again, guess the real estate I was standing on was the real estate that nobody else was bitching about it was standing on. So I had no problem with it.
All right, listen up. We've got great news. We're excited to announce a new affiliate partnership with Fanatics and the WWE Shop. It's an easy way to support your favorite podcasts. Shop official WWE gear and apparel by using our special URL, shopwrestlingmerch.com. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com. Or if you're watching along with us on YouTube, just hit that QR code that's up on the screen right now and check out the description below for the link. We'll have it up on all of our socials as well. But you can shop with confidence for your favorite WWE superstar. Tees, hoodies, caps, championship belts, and more with the WWE shop. And don't forget to use our special link, shopwrestlingmerch.com. Not only do we get some great deals and some great swag, but it's also an easy way to support the show. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com. Let's talk about Gorilla Monsoon. We talked about him a lot on mine and your first episode together, but I think it's worth mentioning here that you were probably a little nervous right before you go out there, and Gorilla approaches you and asks if you're ready. And you said something like, "I'm just trying to remember my lines." And you said, or he said, "You're going to do great." And you wrote in your book, "Monsoon's words were a huge comfort. We had a production meeting the day before, and I wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms by the vast majority of WWF employees. I was known as the voice of the enemy, but Gorilla stood out as being friendly and helpful right from the beginning." I know we've touched on this before, but I know you think so much of Gorilla. It's worth mentioning again and just having you sort of comment on that.
Well, Monsoon was such a respected figure within the WWE family that what he said carried a lot of weight. And I know that he stood up for me on many occasions because I was being unfairly judged simply because of where I last worked. Had nothing to do with the fact that I paid my dues, had nothing to do with the fact that I'd worked in a territory, that I've been on ring crews, I've been referee, I've been a ring announcer, I've booked buildings, I've done a lot of things. In other words, I'd paid my dues. And some guys were so used to living in their own world that they hadn't noticed that I had paid my dues over almost 2 decades. So he sold that for me, and guys saw that a lot of the older guys saw that I was one of the boys. I had paid those dues, and I deserved to be there. And a lot of them, like my work, they just didn't like me for what I represented, which was the voice of WCW, the voice of the enemy. But Monsoon made the rounds, and the word got out. When the word got out that I was going to take his place at WrestleMania 9, this whole story, of course, never is told. So then the heat part of the story was left out. And the reason for that is Gorilla's sick.
Right.
He's not able to do the broadcast. So we're going to have him on the broadcast out of respect, and because he deserves it. He's that father figure, the host type figure. He's going to introduce JR, and off we go. And that's kind of what happened. So he was, but he diffused a lot of things, Conrad, for me, and so did Heenan, and so did Gene Okerlund. Those 3 guys, all respected veterans, hugely talented, and they wanted to work with me as a broadcaster, and I them. But they were very good to have my back, and my stay in WWE would not have been nearly as positive if it had not been for those 3 gentlemen. And certainly in the very beginning, everything was so new. The adrenaline was pumping. I was excited to be there. I mean, you could have done like somebody did with Lawler one time, shit in his crown. And I probably still would have stayed. I didn't even have a hat then. But nonetheless, I was just happy to be there. Honestly, seriously, it sounds crazy. I wasn't some rookie, but I felt like a rookie. I felt like I was starting all over again, and I've been given a new lease on professional life, and I was going to take advantage of it and make it work.
Let's talk about what you wrote in your book. You wrote, "Randy was challenging to work with right from the get-go. I could hear right away that I was going to have to earn my money with Macho. He kept me on my toes, not in a negative way. As soon as the pay-per-view began, I had no idea where exactly he was going in his commentary, so it was hard for me to direct traffic." Before we keep going with what you wrote, just explain very briefly what you mean direct traffic. I understand, because you and I've talked about this a great deal, sort of behind the scenes, the way it works when you're trying to run a 3-man booth, but explain what your role was and what you mean with direct traffic.
Simply means that being the point guard, distributing the ball, distributing the lines, distributing the content, getting the other broadcasters, in this case Savage and Bobby Heenan, involved in the dialogue with some sort of symmetry. So at least we may be traveling in different vehicles. We may be traveling at different speeds, but we're all traveling in the same direction, headed to the same destination. So that's what directing traffic meant, being a point guard and making sure that we kept the show, that we connected the dots with each other, and that we're telling good stories that went along with the visuals that we were seeing on our monitor.
You wrote, I had heard that Savage historically was not an overly trusting individual. It was just the nature of his personality. So he committed to working his own style, and I had to follow. Heenan, on the other hand, was just the opposite. He was loose and funny and made my job easy. I knew Bobby was good just from watching his stuff on TV. I had no idea how good he was until I sat beside him and went live. The more I thought of all the tools that someone can bring into the wrestling business, I could see nobody who had more to offer than Bobby Heenan. I was a huge fan of his wrestling and on-air role as a manager, but now after working with him as an announcer, I left that booth looking at Bobby as the best total wrestling package ever. I knew he was extraordinarily underrated as an in-ring talent. He took the greatest ass whippings in the history of the sport and could feed a comeback as a heel to make a babyface look like Superman, as good as any heel I ever saw. Then the very next week, after being mutilated and disfigured, he'd get back on the microphone and take his heat right back to where it was. He was an artisan. I don't think enough people really talk about this. And I feel like sometimes when people make their Mount Rushmore of wrestling, they just think of in-ring performers. And maybe because this Mount Rushmore conversation happened so long after Bobby's in-ring career, people just don't consider him. But I really do think that Bobby Heenan should start being inserted in that Mount Rushmore conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely. You know, he's very underrated as a wrestler. So that's going to go over a lot of people's heads right now that are listening, because they haven't seen that side of Bobby as a worker. For what he did, as I said, being a chicken shit heel that cheated to gain unfair advantages, that fed a great comeback, whether this is not a deal breaker, but he loved to bleed, and he was very effective at using the color dramatically, right timing. His work in the ring was very underrated, as we said, and it really goes farther than that. It really was. It's like, if he was working today, he'd be one of the top heels in all of wrestling. That's how good he was. But then they found out, well, he's such an amazing talker, and he was. We saw that as a manager, and then as a color commentator, as a host for a TV show. I just don't know of anybody, and I've been so blessed, you know, working with the Lawlers of the world and Heymans of the world. I've been blessed, really. And now with my team at AEW, I haven't been around bad announcers in a long time. But I can only tell you that Bobby Heenan was as good a talent in a multitude of areas as I ever worked with. If I had a territory and I had to make I had a chance to do we're going to do a territory, we're going to have a draft selections. I'm going to make sure that my people that are doing the draft have some way to get Heenan on our team, because he could do 3 or 4 things better than anybody else could do their 3 or 4 things. And that's when you get somebody that's extremely valuable, because they have more tools in their toolbox than just one thing.
Let's talk about you for a minute before we get to the matches. How nervous were you working this show? I mean, this is obviously the biggest show you'd ever been a part of, but you'd been a part of big shows before, whether it was the Superdome or some of the big important pay-per-views that WCW had done. This is another level. But it's also a time where there's really not a lot of employment options from here. Yeah, you could go try to get some work in Eastern Championship Wrestling before it was Extreme, but that's really just another indie. And so technically is Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Guys aren't making major money. You're sort of operating without a net here because of maybe the way you left WCW. And this could be sort of sink or swim here, is it not? You've got to be feeling a lot of pressure.
If I had put a lot of time in worrying about what's next, what happens if I fail, I probably would have been nervous as a whore in church. But I didn't think that. My thoughts were on preparation, being ready to have the information in my fingertips and be prepared for the show, so I could put my style in play, which is more of an athletic style. It's something that WWE at that time had not done a lot of. They kind of started drifting away from it to be more of the entertainment side of sports entertainment. So my thoughts were, Conrad, not on what if I fail. I've never thought that. I'm so egocentric, I guess you could say, but I got confidence in my ability. I think the good Lord blessed me with some abilities in that regard, and I'm grateful for that, quite frankly. but I was nervous that I would not do it, that I would do a good job. The other thing is the glare of the sun was right on our monitors. So seeing the monitors clearly wasn't thought through. So I work strictly off the monitors. That's like doing an empty arena show. There's no reason to look at the arena. I'm sitting behind my monitor at the announce position, looking at my monitor. That's what I watch. And what you put on the monitor, Mr. Director, then that's what I'm going to put a soundtrack to. So that's kind of where I was. So the monitor was very, very important, and I couldn't see the monitor because until the sun went down farther. Secondly, being outside, different deal, different air, not a different air, different. What's the word I'm looking for? The acoustics were different. Again, it's just a different environment. Being outdoors is a different environment. We're not talking about being in a dome. We're talking about being outside on the stars and out in the sun. So that's I was more concerned about that than failing, and what happens if I fail, because again I had great confidence in my ability to tell stories, and I had a great partner in Jan, and she and I were dating at that time, and always getting great positive reinforcement from her, which is every man needs from his partner, or vice versa. Every woman needs from their partner. Positive reinforcement. Communicate with me. So I knew I was going to be okay. Couldn't tell you what the hell I was going to do if this thing didn't work out, but I figured I could figure out something. And but luckily it worked out pretty good. But I was just more worried about executing the show. I think Bruce was my producer. So Bruce is in my ear. And of course, Bruce and Vince, being mischievous, had to have their share of ha-ha, as they say, the Pat Patterson word, ha-ha. And they had to, they had their little shit. And Bruce, trying to egg me on to go harder, faster. And that was just Vince there in his ear. But it was annoying as shit. And it did help the broadcast. But it was funny to them. So they entertained themselves, cool for that. But I was in my zone, man. I was ready to roll because this show was a complicated show with multiple stories to tell and ever-changing stories within the main structure of the theme of the show. So it was all you could say grace over, but I was only focused on kicking ass. And if I was going to go, and after the show was over, hey, look, one more pay-per-view and I was gone again.
Right.
So I'm saying to myself, hey, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I don't know if McMahon's going to like my work or not. I sound like I sound. I look like I look. What the fuck? And he may like it, he may not. But I'll tell you this. I'm going to work my ass off at WrestleMania 9, and I'm going to do the very, very best job that I can and let the cards fall where they may. That's all we can do. It's like this goddamn virus. Nobody knows where it's going to end, stop, start, subside, whatever. It's up to us to live every day in a smart, intelligent way, and don't worry about next week because you can't figure on next week. We're in unprecedented territory, and I was in unprecedented territory there. I'd never seen in person at WrestleMania. I'd never worked a live show for WWE. I mean, the last live show I did was a Clash of Champions. So it was a monumental day. I'm so thankful I got to live through all that. And it was stressful as shit, but I'm glad I got to experience it. It made me a better broadcaster and a better employee, I think.
The first match on the card is a dark match. It's Tito Santana and Papa Shango. Meltzer would say that Papa Shango missed a splash off the top rope in 8 minutes, and he was told it's a dud. Luckily, you can actually watch this, believe it or not. It was filmed, and very recently the footage was released. I guess it first popped up maybe 10 or 12 years ago, but it popped back up late last year, and it's got your commentary on it where you can tell where you guys are trying to sort of find your footing and get comfortable and work out some technical details, because it is a live broadcast and it is outdoors. And so this dark match represented an opportunity to sort of try that. Have you seen that footage that's popped up in the more recent years?
No, I have not seen it. Now that you mentioned it, I'll try to find it and watch it. But I haven't seen it, Conrad. It'd be fun to watch it one time, though.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have some audio here on the show from that clip. But I think that fans will dig sort of getting to hear the behind the scenes. Before the first match begins, of course, they have the opening ceremony. JR and Toga is introduced, then followed by Randy Savage and Bobby Heenan, who makes his own grand entrance. It's been billed as the biggest Toga party ever. And, I don't know. It's a weird and interesting look. You can certainly appreciate the spectacle. And, I gotta wonder the camel spot, the way Heenan came in, How much of that was rehearsed? How much of that is just on the fly improv? Because working with animals is definitely a big variable.
That's just Heenan all the way. Decided to be funny, come out backwards, scared to death. That's just him. No, it wasn't. I don't. We rehearsed the day before doing some things, but I don't recall that being rehearsed. I think that was a Heenan audible, and as usual, it worked.
Well, our first match. This is our third WrestleMania in a row where Shawn Michaels is the opening match on the broadcast. Tatanka would beat Shawn by countout in 18 minutes and 30 seconds. So Shawn keeps the Intercontinental title. He's going to come out with his new valet / manager, Luna Vachon, while Sensational Sherry is in Tatanka's corner. And they're pushing the debut of Vachon pretty hard here. Ultimately it gets 3.5 stars. Meltzer would write, the finish came when Michaels missed a crossbody off the apron, fell on the floor. Referee Joey Morello was counting out Michaels, who then knocked him down. Michaels got back into the ring, but Tatanka hit his Samoan drop, covered him for the pin, but Morello gets up, calls for the bell, ruling that Michaels was the loser by countout. Meltzer would say, very weak finish to what was an excellent opener. After the match, Luna clotheslined Sherry and kicked her a few times. And later in the show, they announced Luna had attacked Sherry in the first aid room as well. What'd you think? I mean, you got two capable talents. Anytime there's Shawn Michaels on WrestleMania, he's going to give you his all, but having sort of a count out finish feels kind of lame as a way to start a WrestleMania.
Uncreative, unnecessary, inexplicably stupid. If you say, well, we didn't want to beat Shawn, or we're giving Tatanka his push, we don't want to beat him, then why did you fucking book the match? Why do you book a match for two guys who go out there and have a great match and then the finish shits all over it? Why would you do that? You wouldn't, if you're thinking. And there's no reason there should have been a winner in that match, finish in that match, and not be convoluted. That's not how you start off the show, because that kind of led to the way the whole show was booked. This created that, and this did that, and this was confusing, and this, we didn't expect this. This is impromptu, blah, blah, blah. So, but I know that they worked on there's some in our notes. You saw there where Meltzer talked about the fact that I was able to talk about Shawn's separated shoulder as it related to Tatanka using a hammerlock as a basis in the story of the match, which WWE had normally not acknowledged. It wasn't that closely called. And I think that was the first time that my style was illustrated on WWE television, was in that very first match with Shawn versus Tatanka, and the fact that Tatanka's working a hammerlock to exploit the injured shoulder of Shawn Michaels. If you go back and look at that, I think you'll hear that pretty prominently.
Next up, we've got the Steiner brothers working with the Head Shrinkers. The Steiner brothers pick up the win in 14 minutes and 22 seconds, 2.5 stars. The thing that everybody talks about in this, well, Meltzer even covers it here. He says, first big spot was Samu doing what appeared to be a hot shot or a stun gun, whatever you want to call the move on Scott. But Fatu had pulled the ropes down and Scott wound up taking a nasty bump on the floor, and it does look brutal. Scott's then pounded on for the next 7 minutes of change. The heat spot went a little long for the live crowd and made the match drag towards the end. Rick tagged in, but was quickly cut off. Several hot moves towards the end, including Rick on Fatu's shoulder, with Samu coming off the top of the cross body, and then Rick turning in midair into making the move a flying power slam. Although it sounds better than it looked. Scott would pin Samu after a Frankensteiner, which missed noticeably. So a less than ideal finish here, maybe a botched finish, but a scary spot to start the match. And the Steiner brothers having their WrestleMania debut here, just like you. And you're very familiar with the Steiners, having worked with them for a long, long time. What'd you think of the match all these years later, watching it back for the first time in a long time?
Well, it wasn't the best Steiners match I'd seen or did see, but it wasn't bad. I love their chemistry with the Head Shrinkers. Two tough teams, physical, big, athletic. I love that. 2.5 stars, probably about right, but it should have been better. But I was very happy that Rick and Scott had elevated their game to where they were in WWE, WWF. And, but I was a little, and going back and watching it, I could see where it could have been better. But was it bad? Hell no, it wasn't bad at all. But I really have great respect for both those teams. And that would have been the match where they could have really made a huge impact at a major event and they didn't do it. They missed their opportunity to maximize their minutes by getting 2.5 stars on Meltzer's rating.
Talk to me a little bit about the Steiner brothers. Why don't you think they were a better fit for the WWE? I mean, these guys had tremendous success everywhere they went. And then for whatever reason here, it just feels amiss.
Well, I don't know that the Steiners were ever a great fit in WWE. Maybe that's what you said.
Yeah.
It's a matter of booking philosophies and what you stress and what it's who you book them with. The Steiners, I believe the Steiners are one of the great tag teams of my generation that I had ever seen and worked with. Great athletics, real. You can't see through their bullshit. They were athletic and fit. Hey, I met, where was I the other day? Was it Atlanta? I think it was in Atlanta. I met Rick Steiner's son, and he came up and introduced himself to me back there in the locker room area. And, of course, I didn't recognize him. I hadn't seen him since he was like in grade school. And I guess he's trying to hook on with an NFL team as a free agent. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's another Steiner in the pipeline. When he's come along, or if he comes along, I guess it still remains to be seen. But a good kid. I sure as hell would. I wish AEW would take a look at him at some point in time, if that's ever in the cards. But nonetheless, they were never booked great in WWE simply because of just different philosophy. They played with the wrong team with their game plan.
Let me ask you, do you think that's because, and I know I'm reaching here a little bit, but do you think it was their background in being these great amateur wrestlers and wearing the Letterman jackets, and it was very realistic? Meanwhile, the WWF's creating Cowboys and Adam Bomb. It just feels like that for whatever reason doesn't line up with Vince's vision. He wants over the top characters, not necessarily badass, legitimate collegiate athletes.
Yeah, you're right. He wanted to make sure that the entertainment side, as the sports entertainment roster in WWE, was fully stocked. But if you book the Steiners, the right teams, I mean, my goodness gracious, you're just printing money because their matches are going to be extraordinary. And but that wasn't the case. So yeah, I think there's probably something to be said about that, Conrad, that the Steiners did not fit the ideal mold that Vince envisioned his superstars to have. And because they were basically just simple extensions of their own personality, which I always believe was, they had another guy come along named Steve Austin not too many years after that with this exact same thing that kind of blew the whole sumbitch wide open. So I'm not a big believer in that we can entertain ourselves right into riches and all that. You still got to deliver the steak, in my opinion.
Well, here comes some entertainment. We've got Crush and Doink the Clown out next. 8 minutes and 28 seconds. Doink gets the win. Meltzer would say not much crowd reaction for a grudge match that was pushed so hard. And I guess we should mention these guys have been after each other for a long time, where, we had the hurt arm and the fake arm, and eventually a second Doink, who we now know is Steve Kern, the former Skinner. He's going to shave off his beard to play the role here. He's going to be the second Doink, who's been hidden under the ring since before the show started and stayed under there until, even after the show was over, even after all the fans had left the building. It gets a 1.5 stars here. What'd you think of the creative? It's definitely a different presentation than what you were used to.
Too much haha. That's what it was. And so it's easy for me to say that. And it's easy for somebody like Bruce or somebody else that was there to say, well, wait a minute. That's what we built our brand on. Our brand is more entertainment than sports. Okay, that's fine. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I don't have to like it. I don't have to love it. I can work hard. I can support it. I can try to do the great narrative of what you're showing me on my video on my television monitor, but I don't have to like it. And that's a situation where we got about in that 93, that era, man, it was a gimmick city. It was just trying to reaching and stabbing out, lunging out to find something that would get hot. And it's ironic that what got hot was reality-based wrestling, not doinks and 2 doinks and 3 doinks and all this other shit. This didn't. But that was the vision that Vince and his inner circle had, because once the inner circle found out what Vince liked, you goddamn better believe that's what they're going to roll with.
Yeah, well, that's what they do here. As we said, Doink gets the win. $1.5. Let's go to the next match. And this one is, maybe one of the forgotten matches. It's Razor Ramon and Bob Backlund. They only go 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Fans are going to cheer Ramon here. Meltzer would say it's probably the first pinfall loss that Backlund has ever done in the WWF. And that must date back to like 1977. We should mention the reason it's so short is, Ramon is coming off of arthroscopic knee surgery back on February 26th. Either way, Meltzer called the match terrible and gave it a negative 1-star rating. It's a big deal to see Bob Backlund lose, but I don't know that this audience knows that. And
they don't know.
It's a less than ideal situation. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's boring. You wonder why the match was held. For fans that knew who Bob Backlund was, it was abrupt. For fans that didn't know who Bob Backlund was, it didn't make a shit. And Razor should have had somebody that he could. I don't know what the characterization of Razor at that time was. I'm assuming they're trying to make him a heel. But man, it's hard to get a cool heel over. That's not, if they're cool and you can relate to them and you want to be cool as well, then that ain't somebody you're going to boo. So I thought it was poor booking. Terrible is a nice, simple word to describe it.
Hey, in my real life, man, I'm helping people save money. I'd be glad to help you too. If you're looking to buy a house, if you're looking to get out of that apartment, if you're looking to sell your house, if you're looking to fix your credit so you can buy a house, if you're looking to get some pro tips on how to save money to buy a house or how much you need to buy a house, or maybe you're just trying to save some money on your current bills, maybe get rid of some credit card debt, maybe consolidate a car payment, maybe you just need some cash to do some remodels around the house. Whatever it is, we can help you at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. But man, if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. But you can get a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at savewithconrad.com, or give us a call toll free, 888-425-0105. By all means, give us a buzz, ask for me. We're right here on the Parkway in Huntsville, Alabama, but licensed pretty much all over the country and able to help you remotely. Seriously, think of me next time you need something in that area. You got a friend in the business. You can also just drop me an email, conrad@savewithconrad.com. If I can be helpful, I'd love to do that. I'd love to let my family help your family. And don't just take my word for it. Go check us out. We got an A+ with the BBB, and you can read all of our 5-star reviews. There's more than 1,000 of them at conradreviews.com. But savewithconrad.com, that's your hookup, man. Next up, we've got the match that everybody is most curious about because of all the rumor and innuendo. It's Ted DiBiase and IRS retaining their tag titles, beating Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake by DQ. They go 18 minutes and 27 seconds. All the talk before the bell rings, though, is about Hulk Hogan. His left eye is shut. Meltzer would say on TV, they gave a cover story that he was working out in the gym the night before the match and was attacked. The story going around was he was involved in a boating accident on Wednesday night. Although everyone who saw him up close said it looked like someone punched him in the eye. The injury was legit, not makeup, although the reasons aren't clear. And when asked after, Hogan said he didn't want to talk about it. Talk to me a little bit about the rumor and innuendo. It's the old telephone, telegram, telewrestler, lots of rumors over the years that this is Macho Man closing this eye up for him because they had some heat over a situation with the divorce that was happening with Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, and maybe the real life role that Hulk Hogan and his wife played in that. Divorces are nasty and messy, and I guess that's believable that something like that could happen. Again, not any implication given that there was any sort of relationship with Elizabeth and Hulk, just saying their wives were friends. You know what I mean? But there's still Macho Man being this volatile individual who's maybe not so trusting. It passes the smell test, but Hogan has always maintained, no, it was a drunken boating accident, and the jet ski popped him in the eye and came back for him. So before you knew all the details, what were the whispers that day on the show?
The same old bullshit, some sensationalistic story that the wrestlers could, they all should be bookers, because once they get a little German, hey, you think maybe, hey brother, so that's all it becomes as another act of fiction. I have no idea what happened. I'm more inclined to believe it was a jet ski accident,
Yeah.
which is not nearly as exotic or nearly as cool or nearly as dirt sheet friendly as Randy Savage popping Hogan and shutting his eye. I doubt that ever happened, quite frankly. I don't know. I wouldn't get on court to swear either way, but if I had to say one way or the other, I would say it was the jet ski and nothing else.
Of course, we see Hulk Hogan knock out DiBiase and IRS with the mask that Beefcake was wearing here. Hogan has DiBiase pinned while Beefcake has IRS pinned. Then Jimmy Hart puts on a referee jacket and counts the fall, hands the belt to Hogan and Beefcake, but the ref comes to and disqualifies them when he sees Jimmy in the ring. Hart threw the ref out of the ring after the match. And then we see the IRS briefcase open up and they find money inside, start handing it to fans at ringside. Lots of gaga, as Pat would say in this one, huh?
Straight out of Memphis. Jimmy Hart, that big brute, throwing the referee physically out of the ring was more than most mortal men could handle. It was just a convoluted finish. And Meltzer gave it 2 stars. I don't know. He was being kind. He must have been having his herbal tea that afternoon, because if it was 2 stars, that's all it was. It could have been so much better, but it was overbooked and overbrothered, and I didn't like it.
Overbrothered. Shout out to a few guys who know that one. On the March 21st edition of WWE Wrestling Challenge, it was mentioned in short or in story terms that the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags, were in line to face Money Inc. for the titles, but they, in quote unquote, stepped aside for Hogan and Beefcake. So we had to have a reason to give these guys a shot at the title. Of course, we know the storyline reason they have an issue, but why would the tag titles be on the line? Well, because the Nasties gave them the shot. Let's keep it going. Lex Luger and Mr. Perfect, they go 10 minutes, 56 seconds. This gets a 1.25 stars. Meltzer would say the finish was a backslide, although Perfect was in the ropes. He says Luger has his best ring entrance, coming in with 4 bikini clad women and holding 4 mirrors with sparklers coming from them. But he says the 2 guys just didn't work well together. And I think that's apparent when you watch it. I mean, Mr. Perfect is one of the all-time best. I don't know that he's at his best right here, but still on his bad day, he can give you a pretty decent match. But that looks challenged here. It doesn't look like this is a good match. I don't know if that's necessarily a stylistic thing, or is it just Luger's rusty, or is Perfect rusty, or a combination of both. Either way though, what's gone is the torture rack finish. Now Luger is doing, I have a metal plate in my forearm and I'm going to knock you out with that. By the way, he does actually have, very legitimately a metal plate in his forearm from a motorcycle accident, but, they're even doing an x-ray gimmick where they're going to show that, hey, this is real. He really does have a plate here. So I like the realism aspect of that, but the old school fan in me does miss the torture rack. I just think that's synonymous with Lex Luger. You watched this one back for the first time in a long time. What'd you think?
Underwhelmed. Goddamn, I'm sounding negative when they showed it. I don't mean to be, folks. I mean, it was one of the most important key days of my career, being a part of WrestleMania 9. But we got to be honest about this thing. And why not? It's a nice trend to have in pro wrestling, a little honesty occasionally. It wasn't a great card. It looked great on paper. The guys that booked the card, Vince and Pat and Bruce, on paper, it looked like a excellent attraction. But the matches did not deliver to their capabilities. Like I said, the finishes are part of that. The convoluted finishes with, Beefcake is average worker at best. Hogan had his issue with the face deal. DiBiase's coming off of surgery. And then you got a healthy IRS, who I think was healthy. But that match, even though all the bad things were facing it, was not good. You go back to Backlund and the Razor, not good. Did it look good on paper? Yeah, it's interesting. Get a laugh out of it. Oh, there's a bad guy. He's a good new heel, and it's all common sense. So we get the new heel, a win over one of the greatest baby faces in the history of WWE, the immortal Bob Backlund. It shit the bed. So, and I think that's the same thing here. Lex did not have the nature to work with on a big match. And as much as I love Kurt Hennig, I love working with him as a broadcaster. I think he's one of the most gifted in-ring performers I have ever seen in my life. But Kurt Hennig was not Ric Flair. And Lex Luger on that stage at WrestleMania needed Ric Flair, and he wasn't there. So I thought the match was a disappointment, quite frankly, because they both could have had better outings. But again, why do we? Maybe Hall should have worked with Perfect, in hindsight. But
right.
Bottom line, it wasn't a very good outing, and the hits just keep on coming because the next match was not a very good outing.
Before we get there, let's talk about Lex's presentation here. Of course, Vince wants to change everything that somebody else was doing. So he can't just come in as the total package Lex Luger. He comes in as the narcissist. Eventually he pivots from there and decides Lex shouldn't be a heel. He should be our next Hulk Hogan. He should be our next babyface. So they go with the great American version of Lex Luger during the Lex Express tour. What'd you think of the narcissist gimmick? And, why do you think Vince was so averse to just going with what we knew with these guys?
Insecurity. He had to be the creator of everything. And, unless you get a talent like Austin or The Rock, who's going to create their own image and going to let their image evolve in their own view, in their own vision. That's what you get. You get plumbers and you get truck drivers and you get trash men and you get all these things. And then you get a narcissist. And to be quite frank about it, and I don't mind to speak to my ignorance sometimes, what the fuck does narcissist mean? If you ask an average wrestling fan in that era, give me your definition in 25 words or less of a narcissist. Well, it wouldn't take them 25 words to tell you I ain't got a goddamn clue. So it was just like are you kidding? So the narcissist, that's someone who is in love with themselves. We all knew that about Lex over the years. But nobody ever thought it was going to draw any money. And guess what? It didn't.
All right. Next up, the one that Bruce Prichard says The Undertaker will never forgive him for. The Undertaker gets a win over Giant Gonzalez in 7 minutes and 33 seconds by DQ. Meltzer says it could have been a lot worse. Campy moment of the show was when Ross was talking about the steps being solid steel after the Undertaker took a bump into him. He then took a second bump into him and knocked him upside down, and it was completely hollow.
Oops.
Second campy moment was Ross talking about him being 8 foot tall when a year earlier he was saying 7'7".
Jesus.
Harvey Whippleman gave Gonzalez a towel and he smothered Undertaker with it. On TV, they said it had chloroform, but nobody in the live audience understood what was going on. Gonzalez is DQ'd and he did a great choke slam on his caretaker, Bill Alfonso. Undertaker is stretchered out and left for dead, but comes back to life and knocks Gonzalez out of the ring. Gonzalez will sell tickets, but not for long. $1.25. This is another guy that you worked with, both of these guys actually, in WCW. The thing that sticks out to me, but the biggest piece is caretaker Bill Alfonso. I've heard over the years that it was Harvey Whippleman that took care of Elegante. Was Bill Alfonso doing that duty here?
He was around. Yeah, he was around. Harvey became George Gonzalez's caretaker because it was perceived that Harvey was more dependable and reliable and had less chance to have any issues. And Bill, good old happy-go-lucky Bill Alfonso, Fonzie was a good ref, loved the business, no doubt about that, but he enjoyed the good life, party life. So, but he was there in the early going. I just never could understand wrestling people booking. Sometimes you got this amazing resource in this Undertaker character.
Right.
Why would you put him in the ring with a guy that, based on simply passing skill set tests, would fail because he didn't have the fundamental skills that he needed to conduct a safe wrestling match? And then to make it even more, to take your eye off the prize, we make it a sleight of hand presentation, chloroform, all this bullshit. And then it was a disqualification finish. Gee, many Christmas. I just don't, again, overthought. It's like somewhere along the way, that triumphant, and WWE believe that anybody that loses is damaged goods. And that's our fault. If you select talent to work for you that aren't good enough performers to lose, then you're wrong in hiring them. So, but I think George should not have been on the card. Undertaker should have been taken care of better. I can see why Bruce, tongue-in-cheek, says Undertaker's never going to forgive him. I'm sure Taker's forgotten that fiasco. But I had so much respect for Undertaker. I felt sad. I felt helpless that I couldn't help him more. And yeah, maybe I'm trying to give a steps all steel to make it look like a more devastating bump, because he's not going to get anything from Gonzalez that's going to resemble anything devastating. And he's the Undertaker. You got to protect him as you can and where you can. That's all I was trying to do. Campy or not, Dave.
John Gonzalez, as we've talked about in your run with WCW, he was elegante there. And Jim Cornette has told the story where you guys see him sitting somewhere and, you say, Jim, this is our new giant. How much of elegante and Giant Gonzalez being in the business rests on your shoulders?
Oh, not that much. I'm like anybody else. If you don't look, here's what you got. You got a guy that's 7 feet plus, 7'7", 7'5", 7'4", where the fuck he was. Okay. He's on the, I think Argentina, he's from Argentina, I think, national basketball team. So you assume if a guy's going to play on international competition, i.e. the goddamn Olympics, that he has some athletic ability. Well, guess what? Not here. He was a space holder. Get on the low block in basketball, get some rebounds, and don't get in the way. Don't block up the middle. Don't let him drive the lane. That's what he did. So, and we saw the guy, and I'm thinking, well, here's the deal. Cornette maybe left out. We're told we're going to hire the guy. This is not me saying, well, I think we should hire that guy, Corny. He could be our next Andre. He could be our Andre. Bullshit. How would I know that? All I knew was we're going to hire the basketball player that the Hawks gave up on. And we're going to train him to see what his aptitude might be as far as pro wrestling presentations are concerned. And if we can make him a rarely seen attraction that can do 3 or 4 basic things, that's all he needs to do, 3 or 4 basic things, then we could book around that and have with a reoccurring role on television. Not every week, not every 2 weeks, but a reoccurring role. But that all went to hell, and all of a sudden, we find a guy who has no aptitude. He's more worried about finding a girlfriend. And at the end of the day, good old Harvey Whippleman was sending money to Gonzalez to feed Gonzalez's family because he had not saved his money. He made good money. He had not saved his money. He had taken care of all his family members, as I'm led to believe. And Harvey, God bless him, on his salary, was sending money to the guy that was in this attraction match at WrestleMania versus The Undertaker. It's a lot deeper story than we've told, but it's a sad thing that, and then George, of course, dying young, and I can't remember what he had, some illness, sadly, but a nice guy. But God Almighty, we should have known in the training stages. We should have known early on, Conrad, he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. But we were not going to take no for an answer. It's the old American way. By God, if we can make this work. Then, of course, he goes to WWE, WWF, and, of course, Vince, the great rebuilder. Well, I can get him over. These other guys, those hayseeds in Atlanta might not be able to, but by God, I can. Well, try again.
Let's try again and talk about the main event here. One of the most hotly debated situations in company history, certainly in this era. Yokozuna and Bret Hart. Bret Hart is going to come in as world champion. He's supposed to be the next guy. Yokozuna beats him in 8 minutes and 55 seconds. Meltzer would write, because of the huge size difference, it looked visually impossible for them to work a credible match, but they did. I was shocked that Hart didn't at least have his head taped to give the illusion because of the angle they ran earlier in the day. It was WCW like to not pay attention to detail. Campy spot of the match is where the USA chants were going, and the only American in the ring was Yokozuna. Heenan points out that neither of the two men are from the US, and Hart pulls off the padding from the turnbuckle, rams Yoko into the exposed steel, and puts him in the scorpion. But then Mr. Fuji throws salt in Bret's eyes and Yoko covers him for the pin. 3 stars. So before we talk about the rest, you've often said here on the show that you don't want to know finishes. You want to be surprised and call it live. Did you know that, hey, we're going to take the strap off of Bret here?
I knew that their plans were for Hogan to leave the show as a champion.
Okay.
But he wasn't even in a match. So to tell you I knew what was going to happen would be a lie. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew in general terms that by the end of the night, when the sun set on WrestleMania 9, that Hogan would be leaving as the champion. And, but I didn't know the fortuitous route that we were going to take to get there. So no, I didn't know. I didn't need to know. I just need to be able to get the sun to go down a little bit more so I could see my monitor and call what we saw. But thanks to Bret and Yoko, they made chicken salad out of some chicken shit with a less than a 9-minute match. I got 3 stars. So far, it's the best match on the card. As far as star ratings are concerned, is it not?
Yeah.
So, I thought it was a respite that we needed. And I give credit to Bret Hart and to Yokozuna for that. They always had amazing chemistry. I could watch them work all day long. Bret knew exactly how to work with Yoko to amplify and to accentuate Yoko's size and strength advantage and his athleticism for a 600-pound guy. And Bret was just Bret. I mean, Bret Hart's just one of those guys that you can't say to me, well, I know a guy that's a better worker than Bret Hart. Show it to me.
Right.
And bring your best argument because I don't believe it. But that's what it was. And I know Bret had a lot to say about it too.
I guess we should mention, technically, Tatanka Shawn Michaels got 3.5 stars. This one gets 3.
Okay.
But before we keep moving, let's quickly mention that the first match on the show is a count out. The second match on the show is a clean finish with the Steiners. The third is a clean finish with Doink, but not really. There's a second clown. So technically some shenanigans. Mm-hmm. Then we get Razor and Bob Backlund. That's a clean finish. Money Inc. and Hogan. That is a DQ. Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez. That is a DQ. A screw job finish here for Yokozuna too. There's just so much fuckery in these finishes. And at this point, the fuckery gets to a whole new level. Hogan comes out and Fuji challenges him immediately for the title. And Hogan's is acting as if he's more concerned with Bret than getting the title. And then Bret tells him, no, take the match and the title. Fuji tries to throw the salt. Of course, Hogan ducks, clothesline, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, new champion in all of 21 seconds. That of course gets a dud. Oh man. We should lay the groundwork, I guess. Bret wrote, on April 2nd, 1993, I brought Stu and Helen with me to Vegas for WrestleMania 9, where my mom was also having a family reunion with her 4 sisters. Stu beamed at once again finding himself the center of the sisters' attention, as he had been when he first fell in love with all of them in the 40s in Long Beach, New York.
Attaboy, Stu. I've got a feeling, Conrad, there may be a little of Blue Chew in the mix here somewhere.
I left them to reminisce and went to my room just in time to answer a call from Vince, who asked me to come to his suite to talk. I knocked on his door and he answered it with that goofy grin. We sit down and Vince says, this is what I want to do. I want you to drop the belt to Yoko tomorrow. And this is not what I expected. I sat there dumbstruck as he went on to explain how Fuji would screw me by throwing salt in my face, blinding me. And after Yoko was handed the belt, Hogan would rush to my aid. And in some kind of roundabout way, Hogan would end up winning the belt from Yoko right then and there. Like I was handing Vince my sword, I told him I appreciated everything he did for me and I'd do whatever he wanted. And Vince said, don't get bitter. I still have big plans for you. And sound bites flashed through my mind of Vince assuring me that I was the long-term champion and not to worry about Hogan, who he still hadn't even spoke to yet. As I stood up to leave, I asked, did you take the belt from me because I didn't do a good enough job? And Vince said, of course not. I'm just going in a different direction. It's still onwards and upwards for you. Nothing is going to change too much for you. I was totally crushed. As I lay in bed that night, the more I thought about what Vince had in mind for Hogan, the more I felt it would completely backfire on both of them. The hokey finish would stink. Maybe not immediately, but in the weeks to come, my fans, who were the biggest contingent in Vince's paying audience at the time, would gag on it. There was something different about my fans. They really believed in me as a person. And by the time I got to the dressing room the following afternoon, word that I was losing the title had already leaked out to the boys. Most of them were quiet and some were angry. Nasty Boy, Shawn, Taker, and others expressed utter disappointment. Knowing I was losing the belt didn't stop me from planning on having a great match. I went over everything with Yoko and designed the match so that all of the best moves were left for the final minute. And then Hulk arrived with his entourage, his wife, his manager, Brutus Beefcake, and Jimmy Hart. Clearly he'd been in the know all along, probably from the first day he came back. And now
you think Hogan's going to come back, Conrad, not knowing what's going to be the champion? Come on.
Of course.
Come on. God, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Of course the deal was done before Bret found out about it. At least I don't know that, but I'd bet money on it. So, Bruce that should be a good show. Maybe Bruce and I should do a show together about this today.
Well, we did talk about this, and Bruce and I got pretty hot. It's in the archives of Something to Wrestle if you want to check it out. But the last line here that Bret wrote is, now he was suddenly acting like my long lost pal and wearing a big smile that rightfully belonged to me. So even though you're new to the company, when do you first hear, hey, we're taking it off of Bret and we're somehow going to find a way to get it on Hogan?
Day of the show. That's all. You know what we're doing, don't you? No. Well, Hogan's going to get the belt. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Hogan's going to leave as a champ. Again, that suited my needs perfectly. I believe in my instincts. I believe in my product knowledge and my love of the game. Still, this very goddamn day, the love of the game has not left me, and it had not left me at WrestleMania 9. If you put it on the monitor, I think I can describe it and add a narrative that is respectful to what the image that we're seeing. So that's where I was. All I knew was it was going to be a Wild West show, a little extemporaneous stuff going to be going on. But as it was explained to me, maybe by Bruce, but Jim, it's not that, because that's before JR. But Jim, it's not that much different than a Mid-South show, because that's what Watts would do, things like that. Switch the belt on the first part of an hour and lose it again on the last part of the hour to the guy that he wanted on to begin with. So it was just information I didn't need to be overridden with because it was very political in nature, and Hogan had not endeared himself to a lot of the guys that were against this particular creative happening. So, and that's neither here nor there. That was before I got there and the whole 9 yards. Pardon me, but that Hogan he had issues with some of the guys that felt like Bret was deserving of a better deal.
Let's keep it going. We should mention that Bret has claimed that Yoko called for the match to go home early, which wound up editing out a lot of their best spots. And Bret wasn't happy about that, but he also wrote after the match, a few minutes later, Hogan came up to me excited and happy and said, "Thank you, brother. I won't forget it. And I'll be happy to return the favor." I looked to my old friend in the eye and said, "I'm going to remember that, Terry." And, I guess I should bring this up because Bret has said that he was led to believe there's going to be a Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart match at SummerSlam 93 with Hulk putting him over in the middle of the ring for the title. He's even said we took promo pictures of us sort of playing tug of war with the belt. Hulk has said he never agreed to do that, and the deal was made for him to win the title from Yoko and then drop it back to him, which is exactly what happened a few months later at the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Of course, Bruce has said, and you can hear all this in the archives, that the reason they did the switch is because they felt like Hogan would mean more on their European tour if he was on the cards working with Yoko and the title was on the line. What say you? Did you ever hear that Bret and Hulk were supposed to work at SummerSlam 93?
I'm sure that was inferred to Bret, but you can't convince me that Hogan and Yoko in a 4 or 5 minute main event in Europe was going to be more than Bret Hart meeting in Europe with Yokozuna and the title. You can't. I'm not going to believe that. I'm just not going to believe that at all. Bret had had this amazing following in a lot of places, but Europe was certainly first and foremost in the eyes of many. Of course, Canada and North America big as well, but Europe became his one of his strongholds. So I don't look. That's their opinion, Bruce's opinion. I'm sure he got it from Vince, and they talked about it. Blah blah blah. It's better for the European tour. I say bullshit on that one.
I guess it's interesting to note that this WrestleMania, we see Hulk and Bret both complete the title match hat trick for WrestleMania. At this point, both guys have competed on the show for the world title, the Intercontinental title, and the tag team titles. As you may remember, it was title versus title at WrestleMania 6. So Warrior had the IC and that was his opponent. Hulk Hogan was his opponent. So That explains how that one happened. Another interesting note is that more than 1/3 of the wrestlers on this show were gone from the company by the end of 93. If you count the dark match, 8 of the 22 wrestlers were gone by the end of the year. Hogan and Beefcake both depart after the European tour that summer. Tito Santana leaves in August, as did Papa Shango. Ted DiBiase would finish up at SummerSlam. Matt Bourne is replaced towards the beginning of fall. That's around the same time Giant Gonzalez leaves. Mr. Perfect takes a sabbatical at the end of October. Man, lots of moving and shaking going on here in 1993.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that things got that drastic, that there were that many people leaving. And it tells me that there could have been some obvious mistakes in hiring. I mean, how do you can't, Vince and I talked about this before. We can't continue to try to recreate a new coat of paint, new finish hole, new tights, new whatever, new music. We can't continue to try to rehabilitate old personas when talents are tired and they feel entitled and they're not going to give you any extra effort. And I just that's what I believe. And so some guys are hired that shouldn't have been there. Some guys that already overstayed their welcome. And we needed to get younger and more athletic and give the fans something new. We all love something new. People saw Matt Hardy is new on AEW. They love the new aspect of that, not even knowing where we're going with that. And neither do I, by the way. Same thing with Brody Lee. New guys, new roles. They've got a track record. You know, they got it, but they're still hungry. They had things to prove. The guys that you mentioned that were let go or that moved on were not willing, seemingly, to give you that new effort or reinvent. They're not Chris Jericho here, reinventing the wheel. They're not reinventing their own persona. They're not Steve Austin coming in and creating a persona based on the Stone Cold character and image. It just wasn't there. So it was a smart move to purge the roster as best they could and prepare to hire some newer guys and hopefully get some guys over that were going to go above and beyond the call of duty that most main eventers are willing to do and have been for generations and generations. I'm not so sure anymore that's a fact, business-wide.
What feedback did Vince give you about your performance after the show?
He loved my enthusiasm. Love how you said, I love having you on the team. You're going to be a lot of fun to be around, you know, but he loved the main thing was my passion and my enthusiasm and the fact that I was very, very prepared. You know, he said, there's not been anybody called WrestleMania that's been as prepared as you ever. So, it was all positive. It was all good in that regard. And it stayed good, until the next time I worked pay-per-view the next month, I think, or 2 months, the King of the Ring. And then I faded off. I had my last close-up, Mr. DeMille. I was gone.
Let's talk about WrestleMania as a whole. You were a part of a lot of big WrestleManias. Where does WrestleMania 9 rank on your list?
Well, number one, for personal fulfillment, I've made it here. Again, you know, you go back in my humble beginnings as a gopher. Cowboy Bill Watts hired to keep Leroy McGurk, his blind partner, out of Watts's quickly fading hairline for $125 a week, all in. I mean, so I said, what does that mean, all in? That means I had no withholding, I had no benefits, had no insurance, I had no expense account. I made $125 a week. And so I felt like I'd paid my dues. And I also felt like that I'd finally, you know, as a kid growing up, riding around with Hodge and Denny Hodge and Skandar Akbar, you know, the big deal was always, man, kid, if you ever get to work in New York, it's always about working New York, the general term, New York. You want to work New York. The territory is what they're talking about. You want to work the Garden in Philly and Boston, et cetera, et cetera. So that was always in front of my mind. So I thought there was never going to be a way for me to get to New York. I wasn't going to be a wrestler. Maybe as a referee in the early going in the 70s. I thought, well, maybe I'll get hired as a referee. But then, you know, that was a kind of a fleeting dream. Then all of a sudden, here I am. And first day on the job, you're doing WrestleMania. It's a pretty damn cool deal. So I look at that event in Caesar's Palace as probably the most pivotal day of my entire career, because it's WrestleMania. For my peers, for the folks in our business, it's the equivalent of the Super Bowl. It's the equivalent of the World Series. All those things. March Madness. Remember we used to have those? But all those things. So it was the epitome. It was the greatest thing that I'd ever accomplished. And I still look back on it. Was it the greatest show I ever worked on? Oh, no. It wasn't. It was the greatest WrestleMania I worked on by far. But it's the most memorable and the most significant because of where it fell in my life's calendar. And so I'm always going to look back on it and be honored and privileged that Vince assigned me to that deal. That's a lot of balls for him to do, because how's this new Southern boy going to do at WrestleMania? How's he going to do live? Am I going to like it? Because it'll be too late if he's already out there and I don't like the way it sounds. I'm screwed. So Vince had the courage and the convictions to give me a shot, and it worked out real well for him on that night and me. Until I got one more pay-per-view opportunity, and then things started coming a little bit unraveled, which I talk a lot about in Under the Black Hat. That's really that relationship with Vince is really clearly defined there and discussed, and it's probably not going to be what you think.
Let's talk about the best match poll in the Wrestling Observer. Shawn Michaels and Tatanka gets first place. Second place is Steiner's Head Shrinkers. Third place, Lex Luger, Mr. Perfect. Do you think they have that right, or would you slide Bret and Yoko in there somewhere?
Oh yeah, I'll have to slide Bret and Yoko in there. And think about how much better these matches would have been if they had legitimate finishes.
Yeah,
that were logical. That didn't make you have a roll your eyes feeling and reaction. So absolutely, what Bret did with Yoko was magical, worked. Because remember, Bret's getting a hand handed to him the day before. That's completely different than anything he ever perceived he was going to deal with, even though the deal had been done days before. Like I said, Hogan's not coming back on the pretense you might win the tag titles. Are you kidding me? Come on, guys. Come on. So, and Bret was smart enough to figure that out. He knew what the plan was. Hogan's not coming in unless he's got the advantage, and that's just good negotiation. If you can do it, then you do it. But I think that Bret's match with Yoko should be on there. But the finishes were just overall disappointing. And man, what a competitive race for the worst match poll.
Yeah. Bob Backlund and Razor Ramon win first place. Undertaker, Giant Gonzalez, not too far behind them. And right on their heels, Hulk Hogan and Yokozuna. Overall, the fans voted 11% thumbs up, 78.6% thumbs down, 10.5% thumbs in the middle. If you could remove how important it was to you personally, just as a fan watching it back, what do you think? Is this thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
Oh, middle at best. A middle at best. You know, I take my own personal little ride out of it and my skin out of that game. But as a wrestling fan, to tune into a wrestling show, it lacked a little bit to be desired. I'd say thumbs in the middle. Maybe I'm being kind, but the atmosphere, being outdoors, the sun shining, Caesar's Palace, the costuming, the lions and tigers and snakes. Oh my, all that stuff was. It gives it something. It gives it some. As for me, again, I can't get past the fact that was where I launched my journey. And I'm very thankful that opportunity came about, as I said many times. So it was in the bottom 10 of pay-per-views of WrestleManias, I would think, that for as far as in-ring product is concerned. It's just the fact that the finishes were so stupid, by and large, unnecessarily, that you wonder, what the hell are we doing here? It's just making sense. So that was my issue there. So the guys, I never have knocked the guys' efforts or how hard they worked. They wanted to be successful. They wanted to have a great match. They wanted to steal the show. But when you're produced a certain way and you're given this mandate on what plays you're going to run, it's a little challenging. So, and it was that challenging that day. For me, I thought we had a hell of a show because I was so wrapped up in it. I was like a kid, golly, I was so pumped and excited. I didn't notice the matches weren't very good until it was all said and done. And then, people start coming at you that, well, how'd you feel to be how'd you feel at WrestleMania? It wasn't a very good show, but looked like you were having fun. I got that a lot. Wasn't a very good show, but looked like you were having fun. Well, I was having fun. And at the moment, I didn't think it was a bad show. In hindsight, upon further review, it was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. No, it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Well, next week, we hope you're going to have fun with us looking at WrestleMania 2000. On top, it's Triple H, The Rock, Mick Foley, and Big Show with McMahon in every corner. We've got Kane and Rikishi on one side taking on DX in a tag match. We've also got Benoit, Jericho, and Kurt Angle in a 2-fall triple threat match for both the IC and the European title. We've got a 6-person intergender match with Chyna and Too Cool taking on the Radicals. We've also got Terry Runnels and the Cat. We've got Edge and Christian working with the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys as a triangle ladder match. We've got TNA, which is Test and Albert with Trish Stratus taking on Head Cheese, the old Al Snow and Steve Blackman duo. We've also got Hardcore Holly working with Crash Holly. Actually, it's a whole hardcore battle royal. How about that? And then to get things started, Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan taking on the Godfather and D'Lo Brown with Ice-T. Lots of fun stuff to cover here next week. Tell a friend, hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to tune in to Dynamite, man, and wash your hands and be nice to people.
Yeah.
A little patience right now. It's a trying time. Let's try to get along. We are all in this same wrestling family, and we appreciate you being a part of our family, and we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of yours. But let's have some positivity, damn it. And we'll, hopefully this coronavirus.
And maybe you'll get your goddamn push if you're positive. How about that? Be positive, get a push.
We'll see you next week right here on Grillin' JR with Jim Ross.
For the first time ever, STARRCAST goes international. Oceania Pro Wrestling and Visit Victoria present STARRCAST Down Under, set to take Ballarat, Victoria by storm from April 11th through to April 14th. Bringing the STARRCAST experience to Australia. And with all the staples of STARRCAST that have made it a wrestling fan's dream destination. Meet and greets with your favorite wrestling stars of yesterday and today. Live stage shows including a Sunday with Bret Hart, a retrospective on his Hall of Fame career, including a special watch-along celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Hitman's legendary WrestleMania 10 match against his brother Owen. Also including an audience Q&A with the excellence of execution. We'll also have live wrestling shows, in-ring action including Mickie James's all-women's show, Her, and a special supercard, Bret Hart's Australian Stampede. All this along with the photo ops, autographs, merch, and memorabilia, making Ballarat the place to be this April. Never before has a weekend like this taken place in Australia until now. STARRCAST Down Under, presented by Oceania Pro Wrestling and Visit Victoria. Tickets are available now. Visit STARRCAST.com for more information.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what AdFreeShows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-Free Shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that AdFreeShows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. AdFreeShows.com.